Hello, and welcome to another episode of Social Workers Rise. It is your host, Catherine here. Today, we're going to be talking about a really important subject. And while this can be kind of, I don't know what the word, depressing maybe, we're going to make it fun today. So we're going to be talking about
that.
I know, girl. But if anyone can make suicide prevention for social workers fun, it's going to be Elyce. So I'm really excited to be here with Elyce Mandich. She is an LCSW, also based out of Southern California. We're like neighbors. She is a therapist, a creator, a speaker, empathy merch creator, and a soon-to-be author. Welcome to the podcast, Elyce.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yes, manifesting the book and all the good things.
Yes. So if you are a publisher and you are looking for a dynamic book teaching people about suicide and making it less boring and more relatable, then Elyce is your girl. But that's just our first plug there.
Yes. Thank you. That was like the perfect way to describe it.
There
It will
you
not
go.
put you to sleep. Yes.
Yay. I would love textbooks like that.
Yeah. Like just talk to me like a human being. We don't need to be falling asleep when we're trying to learn.
Girl, I hear you. So tell us more about you, what it is that you do, and who you are.
Yeah. Obviously, like you said, I'm Elyce. I feel like I always kind of like to mention I never had any desire to be in private practice when I got into this field. I've just kind of made my rounds in social work, I feel like, starting with child welfare services. I worked in schools. Now I'm in private practice. But just along the way, I think after doing a lot of suicide prevention work, I realized how much I genuinely love it and how much I understand people like to understandably shy away from this topic and this conversation. It's not fun to talk about. But I genuinely love it. And I think that's been my own hyper fixation is let me nerd out and learn all the things about it. So while I don't necessarily work with a lot of actively suicidal clients anymore, I mean, sometimes it comes up. I more so am just really passionate about helping other therapists and social workers and mental health professionals just get more comfortable with it and not want to run away when they hear that word.
For sure.
So,
I love it. And
yeah.
Full transparency, we've done over 200 episodes, and
Yeah.
I've done one episode on suicide prevention just because I feel like I know the basics. Like if somebody tells me, hey, I'm thinking about suicide, I know what to do. I'm pretty confident,
Right.
but I'm not that confident to be able to teach others. I feel like it's such a big responsibility. So I'm glad that you have found one of your niches and you're here to teach us.
Yeah, thank you. No, it is a huge responsibility. And I think about there is a lot of that pressure, but I think too, I imagine, I don't know, I've been told that the trainings when I worked for different places and I'm like, oh my gosh, they don't give you nearly enough of what I think we really need to know, or at least in a way that's digestible. So I try to take an approach that's not just what do we do, but really understanding suicide on a foundational level, because that I think plays a role into, how we do it. But yeah, so the reason I'm so passionate about this that, before we jump into anything that I always like to share is I lost my mom to suicide when I was a kid. So obviously spent a lot of time just in my own curiosity, why does this happen? How did this happen to her? Because she was definitely the face of somebody that you would never think would have done something like this. I mean, she socioeconomically, we were fine. Our needs were met. She had 4 kids. She was married in a loving relationship. But there was a lot of stuff, right? And I think it just has been very evident. You don't really know what's going on behind the scene for people. And so, especially with her, I've just gotten really curious about all of the pieces that play into it. So that's what's kind of led me into this, let me learn all the things, right? We are big intellectualizers with our trauma over here, but trying to make it a little more relatable and fun.
Yes. And thank you so much for sharing that, because I found that our own personal experiences, a lot of new social workers are saying oh man, I'm kind of fucked up. I've been through some shit in my life, and they discount themselves out of these situations when I found, I mean, I think this took me a good 10 years to really embrace that my experiences make me unique and give
Yeah,
me that extra superpower to be able to connect with people in ways that not many other people could. And I don't know if you found that to be
totally.
true too.
Oh, 100%. And you think about grad school, right? And I mean, at least at the time, I wonder if it's changing now, but I feel like it was really self-disclosure and being really cautious, which of course you still need to, but there's something about like this part of my story that I feel, especially for my clients who've lost someone to suicide, um, it's just it's a connecting piece. It's that relational aspect. And obviously I'm not going and crying and being like, let me tell you about the day my mom died, but like just them knowing that like there's some relatable factor is so important. So like you're saying, for anyone else, like bring in your stuff. Like I think people don't realize how much somebody wants a human sitting in front of them. Like this is not the way therapy is portrayed or used to be. We're very much, I think, coming into that like human first kind of aspect.
Yes, yes, for sure. So how would you self-disclose, or how have you self-disclosed with a client?
I think in my situation, because of social media, it's pretty common. Like if you've scrolled through my videos or you've been on my website, it's on my website about like personal experience. I share a little bit of it. So most of my clients that seek me out already know this because
Okay.
that's where they found me. Sometimes I will have clients like ask questions like, what was it like for you? Or like they'll ask little pieces, or even just like, how's Mother's Day for you? Or those little aspects. And again, I think it's just that human response that I just am pretty open to sharing within reason. But yeah, most people already know when they find me.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I love that. It's like a little marketing tidbit because you're
Yeah.
able to share a little bit about your story, and therefore that attracts other people who maybe your ideal clients say, "Oh, I relate to that, and this
Yeah.
therapist, that's a differentiating piece. Like this therapist might get me."
Totally. Yeah. I have one that's like one of my niches is like people who've lost someone to suicide. So it's been nice because I think people are just looking for someone that can understand it a little bit, because obviously suicide loss is a little different than like a typical loss.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's very different. It's
Yeah.
one of those traumatic losses.
Yeah.
And I guess this kind of leads us into my next question. Why is it important that we as social workers talk about this topic more?
The first thing that comes to my mind with that is like the more comfortable and confident we feel in this, it like sets the tone for people to feel comfortable talking to us. Um, I remember sitting in front of even like some trainers where I'm like, you're having a hard time saying this word, or you're having a hard time, which no judgment, I get it. But if we're having a hard time, like understanding it or owning it or using these words, like, are you thinking of killing yourself? And we can get into why we ask it that way. But being very direct, it just, I think, sets the precedent that like we can talk about this. Nothing's off limits. It's not like, oh, this is a bad word, which is why all my trainings that I do around this, I call suicide is not a bad word. Let's talk about it, because I really just want to break it down like we're talking about anything else. We can just kind of normalize it.
Yeah,
So, yeah, the more we understand it, the more comfortable our clients can feel.
I love that. And I will self-disclose because I feel uncomfortable as
Yeah.
saying the word suicide. And I don't know why this is,
Yeah.
but I find that when I do if I pick up on the red flags, that I'll say, okay, have you had thoughts of hurting yourself or ending your
Hmm.
life? I don't know
Yeah.
why I cannot say suicide.
I get it. I get it. And I just want to connect to that because that's what I hear more often. I think obviously I'm like the exception, not the rule. Like it's become something I've gotten very comfortable with, but I think it takes time, and I'm trying to think of something that makes me uncomfortable too. I'm sure there's something where it's like you just say that word and you can like feel it in your body on like a somatic level where you're like, oh, I get that like cringy, icky feeling of like saying this. And honestly, when I worked for CPS, I was asking it that way. I was asking, are you having thoughts of wanting to hurt yourself? Because it just feels like I don't mean watered down in a bad way. It just feels safer, right? To like ask it. And I think most people will understand what you mean when you ask that. But when we ask it that way, we're not, it's a completely different question than are you having thoughts of wanting to die or kill yourself or die by suicide? I think all those questions mean the same thing. We just want to make sure that we're asking what we're intending to ask, because somebody may be having thoughts of wanting to kill themselves, but are not thinking of hurting themselves, because hurting is not killing. So it's just making sure we don't really leave any room for ambiguity, because there isn't room for ambiguity when it comes to this. We have to get to some, yes, there's nuance, but we have to get to some like black and white around we either are suicidal or we're not.
Yeah. And just hearing you say it out loud, it kind of smacks me in the face in
Yeah.
just the way of like, wow, okay, so I had thoughts of killing myself, or right, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, and thankfully I've never been suicidal, but I'm thinking,
Yeah.
if I'm like, okay, let me just not be here anymore. Let me
Yeah.
just quietly slip away. But when you put the label of like suicide, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's what I'm thinking of, and then I'm going to be the person who completed suicide, and
Yeah.
it makes it's almost like it communicates the gravity of the situation a lot more
Totally.
clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot in like when you see people's reactions, right? Like if you're asking that kind of question, and I ask it differently. I think that that's like where our interpersonal skills come from when we're sitting with somebody, is like, if they're uncomfortable, like, or they're like a little more quiet, I might say something like, have you had thoughts about, dying or taking your life? Like, I may not say kill yourself. And some clients I might. It just depends on like how I'm reading and how I think they'll pick up on it. But either way, those are all the same questions. We just want to make sure we're asking what we're trying to ask.
Right. Yep, that makes sense. What would you recommend to somebody, because there's a lot of new social workers on here
Yeah.
who they're probably just graduating, they're entering the field, and they will encounter clients who are having these thoughts. And if they don't quite feel comfortable yet, what would you recommend to them?
Mm, recommend to them. Can you help me understand that a little more?
Yeah. So if they are going into their maybe field placement, first place of employment, and they hear us having this conversation, and they're
Yeah.
saying, okay, I don't feel prepared to ask somebody, are you planning to die? What do they do? Like, where do they go for more help? How do they seek support?
I feel like my first thought is within your supports that are already existing, like if you're in supervision or your boss, your supervisor, whoever, that would probably be like my first piece, because I think there's not only the aspect of let me learn, but also let me process a little bit of why this is so uncomfortable for me, which I think is a great place for supervision. Like, let's talk about it. Let's break down, why is this hard for you to discuss? Like, and then also getting some of that learning piece. Selfishly, I'm like, come take my training, because I, one, make it really affordable for anybody in the field, but two, again, I try to piece together this like foundational level of understanding suicide, in addition to like, what do I do? And it's stuff that I feel like I've compiled in my brain over the last 10, 12, 13 years, however long I've been doing social work, I don't know. um because it's all the stuff that I wish I would have been given when I started in this work, rather than piecing together. Because a lot of the times they just kind of tell you, here's a safety plan and here's the questions to ask, but like, that's it. And we don't really learn understanding, kind of like reading between the lines, because I don't know about you, but most of the time when I've had to do any kind of like risk assessment, anything like that, it's not super clear. Like, you have to dig around a little bit. You have to read between the lines. Somebody's not going to use the words necessarily, I feel helpless. You have to know what to hear and look for and listen to, that kind of communicates they're sounding helpless right now, or hopeless, sorry. They're sounding hopeless. They're sounding like they might feel like a burden, but that may not be the language that they're using, because that's not the way most of our clients talk, right?
Right.
It might sound like, I don't see the point. I feel like nobody wants to be around me anymore, right? Like, those are the things that you start to hear where you're like, oh, red flag. Like, let me explore a little bit more about that.
Yes, for sure. So while we're on that, what would you say are the red flags that we need to be looking out for when working with clients to kind of maybe trigger, uh-oh, this might be something more. Maybe I need to start an assessment.
It's so hard, I feel like, to paint this and like direct because there's so many things. I mean, there's some of the obvious like writings or drawings talking about death and suicide. Um, if there's been a recent suicide, especially with like teens, anything like that, suicide contagion is very real, or suicide in the family, anything like that. But I think of it as like most clinicians, therapists, social workers, people are really good at noticing depression. And I feel like it's kind of like, a tree branch of that. Like if somebody's there, you're kind of looking a little bit more into um, what might be going on for them. I tend to explore it even in my initial consultation call with people. And so the way I front load this, because I'm going to add another caveat to this, is you don't always know.
Yeah.
Sometimes suicide or people that are suicidal doesn't look like depression. It might be somebody very high functioning. So while there's a list of warning signs that I can give you and lay out, or people can search online, I like to like preface with my clients. So like one of the first things I say to them is, I'm going to ask you a question about like if you've ever experienced thoughts of wanting to not be alive anymore, past or current. But before I even ask you that, I want to share with you how I view and understand suicide, so that whether it's something going on for you now, it has before, or it never has, and it does in the future, you know exactly where I stand and how I would respond. And I do this because I think, one, I want to normalize for people that there is nobody that is immune to feeling suicidal. Like this can
Yep.
happen to anybody at any time. I've had moms, right, who like, great life, everything's fine. They give birth, and during postpartum, like it comes up.
Mm-hmm.
So what I like to tell people is I view suicidality on a scale ranging from intrusive thoughts, meaning sometimes I'm driving down the road and I have this thought of going off the road. And I'm like, what the hell was that? Right? I have zero desire to die by suicide or kill myself or anything like that. And that actually scared me. Then like passive thoughts, like I had thoughts about death and dying. I wouldn't necessarily ever do anything. And then ranging all the way to a suicide attempt. We have to view suicidality on a scale. If we just go in with thinking it's this like very black and white, somebody, you hear that word and you're like, oh, they're going to do something. It creates a lot of fear for people to be able to talk about their very real experience that most people don't start here. They started somewhere along this line. And so when I paint that picture for people to say, like, where are you at on that scale? And this is how I view that scale. I tell them, like, I would love if that ever comes up for you to feel like this is a place that you can talk to, because when we're in this range, there's so much more we can do to help create safety and to see where you're at and process what's going on than if we wait till here. Because when we get to this point, legally, ethically, I don't have a lot of room for gray.
Right.
So I plant this even in the beginning. And I have clients sometimes that are like, nope, not me, never been there. And I have some that are like, yeah, I actually like have been here before, but they feel that safety to be able to share. So my style is front loading. And that's obviously in the private practice setting. That might look a little bit different in different social work settings. But I think that front loading can be a really helpful piece, but also just kind of looking again between the lines, like risk factors are obviously important to know. And specifically, there's not a lot of the risk factors, protective factors that you see like online or that people will hand out to you have been more geared towards people that are white. And there's been more research that has come out from people, Erica Bath, I think is her name. I want to say she's at USC or UCLA, on Black and Latinx youth specifically. And it's different. And I think the more we understand those risk and protective factors too, can lead us into like, oh, maybe this is something I need to gauge or ask more about because of, my family that I'm working with is experiencing some of these things.
Right. Right. Yeah. Man, there's like so much to cover.
There's so much.
Yeah, but that's why you did a whole training on it. I want to sign up for your training. I'm going to put the link in the show notes, so in case people listening want to take it, then it's there. But this is a really big problem. So earlier, a couple weeks ago, I released an episode on mental health versus mental illness. And I did highlight some of these stats that last year in 2024, nearly 13 million adults, that's over 5%, reported serious thoughts of suicide. And more than 3.4 million youth, that's over 13%, had serious thoughts of suicide. So this is, it's scary. It's scary to think that there's that many people, like out of a room of 100 teenagers, over 13 of them have had serious thoughts about this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like, you know, I have 2 little kids. So even just take off my therapist hat, my mom hat is like, oh, this is something. I have an 8-year-old and I literally have in my notes tab on my phone, like at some point I need to introduce this topic to him. And it sucks because I don't want my like little guy to like know that these things exist or that people feel this way in this world, because I think it can like protect him from it. And at the same time, there's 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds taking their lives. And it's actually very scary for littles because they don't necessarily understand the gravity of it, right?
Yep.
There's a great book. This is a good resource for social workers, but the book series, like a kid's book about, have you seen those?
No.
They're amazing. They have a kid's book about, and then it's all different kinds of topics. So
got it.
My friend Sarah wrote the therapy one, which is really cool. There's one on suicide, and it's such a great book because it hits it from 2 different points. Suicide loss. So like when I'm ready to have this conversation with my kids, especially in sharing how my mom died, that's something I can use to introduce, like, this is what it is. But it's also very validating for like, if you ever feel this way, here's what that looks like and feels like. But it's a great book for, especially for kids, because I feel like there's a lot of resources for teens and adults now, but I will even say I am not an expert on suicidality with little ones. So it's a tough niche that doesn't get addressed enough.
Yes, but I imagine such a high need because I've had clients that come to me, and this is not my specialty, but their parents are saying, okay, their parent died by suicide and they need grief counseling and you're a grief counselor. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
This is a whole separate, I was a grief counselor in hospice. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a whole different kind of loss. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that.
That's my hope. I have all these hopes and dreams of things that I want to do around like psychoeducation to understand, because I think back to like little 10-year-old me during this loss. I'm like, oh my God, I would have loved to have had a better understanding at the time of what this meant, because the first things I heard were like, you know, I went to a private Christian school growing up, and the things I learned were like, oh, your mom went to hell. And I'm like, fuck, okay, cool. Like, that's pretty traumatizing. Yeah. Like, I wish somebody would have explained it in a way of like, she was really sick. Her brain was really sick. And what does that mean? Yep. I, of course, got that from like my family, but having something kind of concrete to like counteract some of the things I was hearing would have been so helpful.
Yes, for sure. So my last question, well, probably not my last question, one of the last ones is, what do we do, or what do you recommend if we are out there on a visit in the field and someone says, yes, I don't want to be here anymore and I've thought about suicide?
Okay, so to answer, I'm like, this is where I can get so long-winded. To answer this in the scope of a podcast question, I will say the biggest thing, and it feels like stating the obvious, but like not everyone knows, and I get that, is like, you do not leave this person alone. We don't step away from this person to call our boss. They need to be in eyesight, earshot at all times. Most of the time when this happens, someone's telling you in a way that's probably pretty calm. It's not going to happen right here, right now. And the best thing that I say is time. Like, one of the biggest ways that we can help somebody through a moment like that, if it's a moment, is to sit with them. And I know when these things come up, like, our brains go to, especially with different places that we work, like, oh, suicide protocol, where's my threat assessment form? Let me get my checkboxes answered. And yes, you do need to get all that. But sit with that person. And I think my biggest like reminder in this is, you are sitting with a whole ass human being who just shared with you they don't want to be alive anymore. And the best thing you can do for them, which I hope this alleviates anything on anybody, before you put in any assessment skills is like, I'm just a human being sitting with someone else. And if anything, I can offer empathy, validation, because validation doesn't mean agreeing, and just space. Like from a relational piece, let me just be with somebody and acknowledge how hard that has to be. And thank you so much for sharing that with me. Can you tell me more about what that's like for you? And then, yeah, throughout this, of course, you need to assess where are they at on that scale that I talked about. And there's going to be different protocols for, whatever your agency organization does and how you respond. But um, that may look like safety planning. That may look like a voluntary hold somebody somewhere. That may look like an involuntary hold, because legally, ethically, we all have opinions on this. I know that is the reality of what our ethic codes are, is what we need to do. But I think sometimes people just jump straight to, okay, do you have a plan to kill yourself? What is your plan? Right. And it's very like robotic. And I've been there. I've done it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot, like, I think getting comfortable finding ways of asking those questions that you have to have answered that don't feel like you're reading a checkbox. It's like, okay, like, yeah, I'm here. We've been talking for the last, 20, 30 minutes or so. I know you're saying you have these thoughts of like wanting to not be here anymore, but have you thought about what that would look like? No, or yeah. Okay, can you tell me more about that? Lots of just open-ended. We're just trying to gather information and understand. Because the more information we get, the more we know what to do from here. And you'll start to like hear that. I don't know if it's always necessarily these black and white questions. Sometimes it's just giving people the space and platform to be able to express themselves, and we can get a lot of that.
Beautiful. Yes, I love that. I love the idea of the open-ended questions and just being human first, which is a go-to thing. I don't want to say intervention, but just a go-to method of being a good social worker. You're a human and these people are humans, and they don't, a lot of times they don't see you as a like quote social worker. They see you as a person, because if they're sharing this with you, they clearly trust you. They're open to talking about it with you. And I think I'm kind of thinking, if I'm sharing this, maybe the most hurtful thing would be for the person to shut down.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I've watched, and I'm sure you have too, if anybody's been in public sector, I've worked with some great crisis response teams. I've worked with some great law enforcement, but more often than not, I've seen really bad work in this area, and it shuts people down and can also set the tone, not just for right now, but like, fuck that, I'm never speaking about this to anybody again, which I've even gotten. I've had people, because of the response I've had to take, and I understand it. And I think it's just kind of coming back to, again, that relational piece. And some of the best crisis response people I've worked with, even if the end result is, unfortunately, we're going to do everything we can to keep you alive, even if that means involuntarily putting you on a hold, there's a way to go about this in a way that's human. When I worked at the high school, we would try to, let's wait until kids are in class before this kid has to go out on a stretcher to the ambulance. Like, let's not traumatize them more than it needs to be. So I could, again, go into all the way the systems are not necessarily set up and built for this. But given what we have, I think there's a way that we can strengthen our skill set to make this the least harmful that we can and be someone with them. And this is not for everybody, but when I was in the school setting, this is when I dealt with active suicidality the most. I mean, yeah, I'm sure I'm off at 3:30 technically, but I'm sorry, I'm not going to like leave this kiddo who just told me they want to end their life and we're trying to figure this out at 3:30. I'll sit here until 6:00 with you if that's what it takes. And that's not possible for everybody. That's not, always feasible, but I think it's just, again, you show up where you can and how you can with what you can.
For sure. Yeah, we can't change the systems right away. We can't control other people, but we can control ourselves.
Yeah.
And as you were talking, I thought how helpful it would be for a new social worker to even do a role play with this, right? You have your checklist, you have your list of questions, but how do we practice saying, practice this scenario. Say, okay, you're with somebody, you're just chit chatting, and they're like, yeah, I'm thinking about ending my life. And then how do we integrate these questions into our conversation with them to get the
Yeah.
information so that it sounds more gentle and human and less robotic, and like now we've been joking around having fun, and now I'm like, okay, let me get the checklist out.
Totally. Yeah, and doing it in like a fluid way, right?
Exactly.
And honestly, even before role play, I know how much I hated role play. I'm like, yeah, practice in the mirror.
Yeah,
Record yourself saying it a few times. Like you in your own space can do that too and start to find yourself like getting more comfortable.
definitely. Thank you. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much, Elyce. Do you feel like we missed anything that is important to add?
I mean, I'm like, I could talk about this for so long, but no, I think it's a good introduction conversation. But more than anything, especially for those like new social workers, I just want to normalize. It makes sense if you're like, oh, this is so terrifying. Like, I get it. And, I imagine you and I have been in the field around the same amount of time, but it's like all of this stuff takes time. And I love that you shared how uncomfortable it still is for you, because how normalizing for people to hear that too. Because that is something I will get sometimes is like, I'll have people come to my trainings that have been in the field for a while or feel like they should know this. And there's so much like shame that comes with that. And I just hope more people can, yeah, just get more comfortable like owning it. And when we can put out there our areas of, you know, uh, again, I keep getting stuck on words, but like challenges, it helps other people to like acknowledge where theirs are too.
Yes, yes, for sure. And I released a book or re-released the book called The Rising Social Work Clinician. It is a supervision logbook and resource guide. I put
But
in a little section in there about safety planning and some warning signs. So if you're listening right now and you need just a field companion, go pick this up. It's available on Amazon. If you are serious about learning more about this subject of suicide, check out Elyce's training. The link is there in the show notes. And Elyce, where can people find you and get connected with you?
yeah, and I want to note on the training, the one that's available right now, it's just from one I did last September. I tend to do a live one every September, and then I just sell the recorded version after. But if you're like, I want to go to this live, I want to interact, I typically do them around Suicide Prevention Month. That's when people start like, oh, I need to learn more about this. But you can find me on Instagram. That's probably the place I'm the most active, at the Therapy Co. with an underscore after my websites. But yeah, I'd love to connect. I think connecting with people newer in the field is my favorite. So
Awesome. Thank you so much.
yeah,
We'll talk next
thank
time.
you.
Bye.
Bye.